Hi, I'm Mia. On my birthday, my mom didn't call, didn't visit. Instead, she burned down my cabin. The same cabin my dad built, and left for me. They told the world I was unstable, said I imagined it all. But when she came home, smiling like nothing happened, I was already waiting. And I wasn't alone. What would you do if your own mother tried to erase you? I woke up to the sound of nothing. No knocks on the door. No phone buzz. Just wind scratching against the wooden walls of my cabin like an old dog pawing at a memory it couldn't reach. I sat up in bed. The air inside was colder than usual. I hadn't lit the fireplace last night. I didn't think I'd need it. It was supposed to be a warm day. A good day. But that didn't come. The coffee machine had shut off hours ago. The pot was still full, black, bitter, like it always was when nobody showed up to drink it with me. On the small table by the window, I saw the only thing that ever remembered my birthday. A card from when I was maybe 6. The edges were curled, the handwriting faded. "Mom loves you always," it read, with a little drawing of a heart. I'd hidden it in a drawer years ago, but some part of me still kept pulling it out. Maybe that part still hoped. I opened the front door, let the cold morning air cut through the quiet. Lake Tahoe's stillness was beautiful this time of year. If you liked loneliness dressed up in pine trees and fog. I hadn't heard from my mother in weeks. Not a call, not a text. My father, gone years ago. My brother, missing in action since 2019. My birthday was just another Thursday in a long string of days nobody marked. But then came the sound of tires on gravel. A black SUV rolled up slowly, like it wasn't in a hurry to find me. I stood there, robe wrapped tight, arms crossed. The door opened. Delilah stepped out, perfectly put together in cream slacks and that scent she used to wear when we still hugged. She smiled. "You thought I'd forget your birthday again?" She said it like it was a joke, like we were playing at love, like she hadn't already taught me not to expect anything. I let her in. The cabin suddenly felt smaller with her inside. Her perfume, rose, and something sharp underneath, wrapped around me like a rope I didn't want to hold. She looked around, said how quaint it all was, how peaceful, how she always loved this place, lies dressed as compliments. I nodded, poured her coffee. She didn't drink it. "You're quiet," she said. "I'm just surprised you're here." She laughed like it didn't matter. "Birthdays are for family." I wanted to ask her why she treated me like the extra room in a house she never wanted. Why every Christmas I got the discount gift while my brother got plane tickets and stock. But I didn't get far. "So, what are your plans?" she said, cutting off the conversation like a weed. "Nothing," I replied. "Like always." She nodded, as if that satisfied her. I noticed the metal briefcase she carried. She didn't mention it. Set it gently by the door like it was just groceries. Then, as quickly as she'd come, she stood. "I forgot something in town," she said. "Won't be long." And she was gone. I stood alone again, hands cold from holding a mug I hadn't sipped. The silence returned like a friend with bad news. I stepped outside for air. The wind had changed. Smokier, hot. That's when I saw it. The back door was open. The cabin, my cabin, was on fire. The flames moved like they knew what they were doing. Hungry, efficient. I ran toward the entrance, instinct leading my legs while my brain lagged behind. Inside was orange, and cracking, and heat. I tried to get to the bookshelf. Just one photo album. Just one. But the fire snapped back at me, so I stopped, and I watched it burn. The birthday card, still on the table, curled up in the heat like it was ashamed to exist. The words, "Mom loves you always," vanished in smoke. And that's when the calm hit. Not screaming, not crying, just stillness. Because deep down, I knew. It wasn't an accident. Not the door left open. Not the visit. Not the way she left that fast, that calm. No loose wires. No stove left on. Just a setup. I remembered her on the phone a few weeks ago. Thought it was just business. "No, it has to be finalized this month. Inheritance can't drag past the quarter." Inheritance. The cabin had just been insured. In my name. For $3 billion. I never signed anything. But I remembered a paper she'd asked me to initial. Said it was for tax reasons. Trust. What a joke. She hadn't just ignored me all these years. She'd been planning. She weaponized being my mother. I didn't cry. My hands shook, but I didn't cry. She set me up, I whispered. Not like in the movies, not with guns or men in suits, with coffee and cards and a mother's smile. That night, I checked into a cheap motel 2 towns over. Red neon blinked outside my window like a warning light. I sat for hours, silent, still smelling like smoke. Then I opened my laptop. Insurance fraud, federal statutes, California fire codes, trust law, LLC shell companies. I dug until my eyes burned. She didn't just burn my house, she buried me in paperwork. That's what she thought. I found a trail, an LLC registered 6 months ago. My name on the documents, I didn't sign them, but there it was. She'd used me. Again. I stood in front of the mirror in that dingy room, hair messy, face ash-streaked. If she wants war, I said to my own eyes, I'll serve it cold. The ash was still warm when I stepped over the yellow tape. It was early, just past dawn. The sun hadn't fully crested the ridge, and the sky over the cabin's ruins was gray with a kind of sadness that felt personal. Smoke no longer hung thick, but it still clung to everything, tucked in the blackened corners of what used to be my home. I stood there quietly, breathing it in. Soot and pine. Grief wearing perfume. The steps were gone. What was left of the porch had collapsed into itself like an apology too late. But a fire marshal's report, sealed in plastic, had blown loose and caught against a charred log. Cause, inconclusive. That word sat on the page like a smirk. That's how it goes when the person who burns you smiles while doing it. They don't leave fingerprints. They leave open doors and unanswered questions. I stepped over twisted beams and broken glass. My boot caught on something small. Melted wax, colors barely visible. Birthday candles. She timed it. She wanted it poetic. I bent down, picked up a splintered piece of wood from the frame of my bedroom window. It was cold now, but it still carried the weight of heat. I slipped it into my coat pocket. Not for court, for me. Back at the motel, I was barely inside when my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered on instinct. Mia. The voice was familiar but older, like a memory I hadn't dusted off in a while. Quentin? I didn't think you'd be there. What are you? You weren't supposed to be there, Mia. Then silence. Then the click. He hadn't called in over a year. Last I heard he was in New York, chasing another startup dream or maybe a divorce. I couldn't keep track. But that voice, it wasn't guilt. It was warning. I sat down, staring at the screen like it would give me more. I thought back to the last time we were all in a room together. Thanksgiving, maybe. Quentin had cornered Dad in the kitchen, asking about the safety deposit box, something about an old agreement, locked away after the market crash. I hadn't thought much of it. Just another family secret in a long line of things we didn't say out loud. But now I started to see the pattern. Not a single betrayal, but a web. Later that afternoon, I drove out to Citrus Heights to see Lorna Beaumont, my father's old attorney. Her office hadn't changed in 20 years. Same fading diplomas, same dusty fake plant in the corner. She didn't greet me with warmth, just understanding. He said to give you this if things got heated. She handed me a sealed envelope. Her fingers lingered on it like she knew what was inside could change everything. Inside was a notarized transfer of ownership. Delilah had moved the land my cabin sat on into a shell company. The signature? Mine. I never signed it. The LLC is registered under your name, Lorna said. Delilah set it up months ago. And she's planning something big. How is that even legal? She's clever. Uses trust funds and forged documents the way most people use napkins. I sat there, stomach twisting, hands cold. She wants it all burned down, I said quietly. Lorna nodded. And she'll do it with a smile. Before I left, Lorna gripped my hand. Don't confront her without proof. She's 10 steps ahead, and she's not afraid to burn more than cabins. She taught me how to survive fire, I said. Now I'll show her what I learned. That night, I drove to Sacramento. The bank was just off J Street, tucked between a real estate office and a vape shop. Nothing about it looked important, but it held pieces of my life I didn't know had been stolen. I walked in and told them I needed account summaries for the shell company. They asked for ID. I gave it. "You're listed as co-signer," the woman said. "You have full access." She handed me a stack of statements. I didn't flinch until I saw the transfers. Large sums moved to a Miami property investment. My name, my signature. I remembered being in a hospital bed last year after surgery. Delilah came to visit with flowers and soup. I was out of it, groggy, in pain. She said something about handling my bills. "Just sign here. Don't worry, sweetheart." I signed. That's when it started. She didn't need fire to ruin me. She had my trust. I walked out of that bank with the papers in hand, face calm, heart cracking. The day she became my enemy wasn't the day she lit the fire. It was the day she taught me to trust her again. Back at the motel, I didn't sleep. I unpacked a small webcam and hooked it to the curtain rod, facing the center of the room. Plugged in an old recorder, pressed record. I spoke softly. "People love revenge stories," I said. "But this isn't about revenge, it's about exposure. The kind that makes even fire look merciful." Each night, I started logging what I found. In transactions, names, patterns. I wasn't just collecting evidence. I was building a story. And then I did something I hadn't done since I was a teenager. I called her burner phone. She never answered numbers she didn't know. I left a voicemail. "Happy birthday, Mom," I said, voice steady. "Just wanted you to know. I got your message loud and clear." I ended the call, then sat back in the motel chair, lamp glow soft on my face. The charred piece of wood rested under my fingers on the table. It wasn't a keepsake. It was a match. The lodge smelled of old wood and regret. I arrived just before noon. The sun slanted through tall pines, casting long shadows across the steps. I stepped inside, the memory of my father's laughter echoing like a ghost. Every year, he dragged us all up here, even when the snow soaked our boots, even when we complained. He said these walls held truth. Today, I wanted that truth too. I was the only one in the room, no Quentin, no cousin, just me and the attorney who cleared his throat. Others watched via Zoom, tiny squares, frozen faces. The attorney unfolded the papers. My heart slowed when I saw the date. A week before my father fell ill, the will had been changed, the percentage I'd been promised, 40%. Now, 2. Delilah, named executor, primary beneficiary. I pressed my hands into my knees so I wouldn't reach out and rip the page in half. Quentin's frame flickered on screen. He was silent. Jude's eyes reddened. The attorney read each clause in a calm voice, legal clarity in every word. My stare locked on Delilah, wondering if she heard her name sound like it stole something. Later, I sifted through hospital records. Delilah was Dad's only visitor in his final week. I wasn't even allowed to see him those days. Visiting hours changed after she asked. I tracked down a nurse who recalls Delilah insisting on privacy. A sign by the visitor log had been changed. My name removed. There was paperwork. Someone manually erased me from something fundamental. I held on to the memory of Dad's last request. Look after the cabin. Words he spoke when I was leaning against him, cold hands on his chest. I should have known it was more than a burden. That night, Quentin showed up at the motel. He stood in the doorway, breath smelling like regret. His shirt was stained, wine, sweat, shame. He admitted Delilah offered him a seat in the family trust if he stayed silent. I asked if he had refused. His eyes wavered. "I did," he said. "But it was the promise itself, knowing he was part of something rotten, that cut me deeper than any betrayal." He handed me an old photo. Dad, a mystery man beside him, dusk light behind them. Someone Dad trusted, now gone. Quentin's voice shook. She needed someone to believe the lie. I believed. Then he left me with warnings. A trust half built on greed has foundations that crack. Jude found me later in a cafe. No one visits anymore. Quiet place, neither warm nor cold. He slid a USB across the table, his hand wobbling. Delilah tried to bribe him to testify against me, saying I burned the cabin for money. He didn't go that far. But he knew I would pay for her story. He didn't erase all files. He saved the one she couldn't control. Video clips from the hospital, footage of me sedated, Delilah present, asking for my passwords. I felt my chest shrink as Jude's words hit me. I didn't warn you. I'm sorry. It doesn't help much. Apology tastes like ashes. Back in my motel room, I plugged in the USB. Footage blurred, frames dark and shaky. I watched Delilah standing over me in the hospital, her lips close, her voice a whisper I didn't understand then. I paused and replayed. That moment, she asked me something about login info. I mumbled, my throat thick. I'd trusted her. I'd signed papers while believing mothers protect us. I pinned photos on the wall, legal documents, hospital logs, that photo Quentin gave me, all lined up like evidence in a courtroom I wasn't sure I'd survive. I stared in the mirror, my hair tangled, my eyes raw, but something fierce flickered beneath the hurt. I thought I came here for answers. Truth feels heavier than heartbreak, and I've decided I'm done feeling alone. Tonight, the package arrived. The paper inside was scorched around the edges. The words, "You weren't supposed to survive." It started with a name on a vault. I drove out to Carson City on a gray Thursday, the kind of day where clouds settle like dust and the wind keeps secrets. The branch office looked like it hadn't changed in 30 years. Same chipped counters, same plastic plants. Mr. Sanderson greeted me with a warm, tired smile, said he remembered me from when I was knee-high, playing with Lincoln logs in the corner while Dad argued interest rates. When I asked about my father's legacy account, his face changed. A pause too long. Then he said, "Your mother closed that account weeks after Robert passed, cleared it out." That account, Dad called it Mia's independent project, said it was my parachute. Turns out the cord was cut before I ever jumped. I asked to see the full transaction history. Sanderson tried, then shook his head. "That data's archived now. You'll need a court order for anything older than 60 days. He handed me a brochure like that made up for anything. I walked out with clenched teeth and a deeper sense of just how much Delilah had gutted before I ever noticed. By late afternoon, I was knocking on the door of a woman I'd once begged for help and who told me no. Letitia Banks opened the door with a sharp look that softened when she saw my face. "You again," she said. "Thought I'd see your mother show up before you did." She let me in, offered nothing but her time. I told her everything, left out nothing. She didn't flinch when I mentioned the fire, or the trust, or how my own name was being used to make me complicit. Letitia sat quiet for a long time, then finally said, "Delilah once tried to pull something similar on one of my clients. Wanted us to paint a narrative. Told me, you can shape truth if you start early enough. I told her no. She never forgave me for that. She agreed to take my case, but gave me one last out. If we do this, Mia, there's no walking it back. This will get ugly. Your family will hate you." I didn't blink. I said, "They already do." She started the paperwork for a petition to unseat Delilah as executor. I left her office with more than a folder. I left with the feeling I'd finally drawn a line in the sand. The next morning, I met Jude again. This time, I brought the printouts and Letitia's notes. He looked older than he did 2 days ago. He stared at the pages, running a hand through his thinning hair. "I think I know what this LLC is," he muttered. "Rickon, my mom's old campaign manager. He and Delilah co-owned a few dummy companies years ago. One of 'em's still active." He showed me emails, Delilah's name, Rickon's initials, discussions about liquidating legacy assets, and keeping Mia quiet if she starts sniffing. Jude's hands trembled. "I thought it was about control," he said, "but she's trying to erase you. Erase, not defeat, not manipulate. Erase." That evening, I drove out to what was left of the cabin. With blueprints from Dad's old workshop, I checked the remains room by room. The fire marshal said it started in the kitchen. He was wrong. The real ignition point was the fuse box. Overloaded deliberately, patterned scorch marks told the story if you knew how to read them. And I did. Under a warped floorboard in the bedroom, I found it. A small, partially melted safe. Still locked. I cracked it with tools from Dad's shed. Inside were notes, his handwriting, still firm, still deliberate. If something happens, don't trust what they tell you. There was a map, a location marked in red, a note that said, mounted camera, living room, inside the deer. I drove straight back to town, straight to the pawn shop where the fire investigators said most items had been hauled. Took 3 stops to find it. A deer head, dusty and cracked, but still there. I paid in cash, took it to a tech guy Jude recommended. We cracked open the mount. There it was, a tiny camera lodged inside the antlers. Battery dead, memory card intact. It took hours, but he recovered what he could. The footage was grainy, but the outline was clear. A silhouette, coat, scarf, slow steps, a gas can, a voice. Muffled, unclear words. But the posture, the way the head tilted, it was her. I watched the footage 3 times. Didn't cry, didn't speak, just sat in that metal chair and let the weight of it settle in my chest. Sometimes proof doesn't set you free. Sometimes it just tells you how far they were willing to go. The phone rang while I was still staring at the screen. It was Letitia. "I just got a call," she said. "From their attorney. They want to settle privately." "That's a trap, Mia, and they know you're closing in." I woke up before sunlight reached my motel window. The room smelled of stale coffee and regret. I folded the thin blanket over my knees, stared at the phone on the nightstand. Yesterday's voicemail echoed in my head. "Happy birthday, Mom. Just wanted you to know. I got your message loud and clear." My stomach nodded. I held the small charred piece of wood, still rough and jagged. One fragment of home. One reminder of what was lost. I went looking through my emails. Jude's messages lit up first. Screenshots of conversations where Delilah promised him money to keep quiet, promised him loyalty. I could taste bitterness in the air. I pictured him there, torn, thinking about integrity, thinking about loyalty, and choosing cash over truth. I almost threw my phone against the wall, but I didn't. I breathed out, held the wood piece tight, and let anger settle in a cold burn behind my ribs. I turned on the TV later and saw it, local news anchors repeating phrases, "unstable daughter," "Silas accused of arson." I saw my face in the screen and wondered if they believed their own lies. Friends messaged, half concerned, half curious. Some believed Delilah's narrative without asking. When Delilah once spoke at a family dinner about weight of inheritance, she said, "Some can't carry what's owed them." That night, I felt every stare in the room, felt the silence after her line. I felt the betrayal, not just from her, but from people I trusted to know me. Then, Letitia called. "Got a court order," she said, voice low. "Assets frozen. For now." My heart pounded. But then Delilah's response came via lawyer's letter. It said I should be grateful for what has been built. Grateful. As if she'd built kindness in ashes. There was an audio clip in the letter. My voice, scrambled, mangled. Speaking nonsense while ill. They tried to use it to show me as broken. I listened alone. Something cracked in me. I recorded it, because truth isn't always loud. Sometimes you collect the cracks. After dark, I dug into my health records, doctor's notes, prescription sedatives, instructions from nurses, low blood pressure. Then I found the part where my mother asked for my digital passwords. In case of emergency, she'd said. Emergency. But she used it, used me when I couldn't fight back. When I was fading, she reached in. I trusted she was worried. I thought she was mother. Turns out she was always calculating. Night came. I sat at the motel desk. Envelope from Letitia weighed beside me. Evidence scattered like weapons. The small charred wood piece glinted under the yellow lamp. I thought about my father's voice. "Don't let them rewrite your story." My palm burned, holding that fragment. My heart pounded. I was done hiding. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. Her voice, cold, dismissive. "You have until morning. Settle this quietly, or everything burns down." I closed my eyes. I felt anger sharper than grief. Then I spoke softly and clearly. Do your worst. I flew into San Francisco with my heart half folded, hope fighting fear in every breath. Letitia Banks's office smelled of old leather and polished wood, the kind of place where promises got pinned down. I watched her adjust the light just so, the oak bookshelves behind her heavy with law books, quotes in gilt. Justice delayed is justice denied. She said she had lay of the land, that we'd get subpoenas, trust records, LLC paper trails. I nodded, imprinting every detail in my mind, because this was the first time I'd felt like I wasn't carrying all the weight alone. Letitia paused then. She told me Rachel, they call him Rickon, Delilah's former partner, had quietly come forward. He held documents I'd never seen, bank transfers, articles of incorporation, signatures that bore my name but weren't mine. My pulse hammered. I thought I had every piece before. Turns out some lay hidden under her control. They'll try to paint you as unstable, Letitia warned. We have to anticipate every lie. I swallowed. I'd grown used to being invisible. Now I felt the flicker, the we versus them. Rickon's documents came in mid-morning. I was seated in Letitia's small conference room when I scrolled through them, transfer after transfer. Deeds to LLCs registered under partnerships I hadn't agreed to. Signatures that looked mine, but were stamped, forged, filed without sight of me. Then I found one paper. Medical emergency. That phrase hit me like ice. Delilah had asked for my passwords during one of my hospital stays. When I was weak, when I barely understood what was asked, the betrayal crystallized. She wasn't just trying to take my money. She was trying to erase any chance I had at a voice. Later, Jude met me in a diner when the light was fading. He had transcripts. They weren't perfect, crackled files, distant voices, but he had Delilah speaking with attorneys. If she knows, don't spare her feelings. Let the world see her break. He said it quietly, like he didn't want to admit gravity. I felt my throat close. This wasn't care. It was cruelty mapped into words. I called Quentin from the parking lot. He dismissed the transcripts. You know your mother, he said. You know she'll spin it. His tone made me angry. I wanted him to see me, was still hoping. But I also knew, sometimes hope costs you your peace. Under Letitia's guidance, I got permission to return to the cabin site with a forensics team. The wind was colder, ash still drifting like cursed confetti. In the silence, I stood among the skeleton of what used to be wood and memories. The safe survived. The journal inside? Dad's handwriting whispered across edges. His ambition for me, his dreams stashed before his end. He'd set aside money for environmental conservation, something he loved more than legacy. Delilah removed it. He'd mapped out places that meant something to us. They were gone. Fire had taken structure, but she had taken direction. I held the journal open by flashlight. I read, if something happens, don't trust what they tell you. I touched the pages with burned edges. I thought of all the times she told me comforting lies. This time, the lie wouldn't stand. I recorded a video in the ruins. My face pale under moonlight, voice steady. You used my name, I said. You used my trust. You thought shadow could hide everything. But light doesn't need your permission. The flames were gone, only embers beneath charred floorboards, but the truth was still burning. The night ended with me packing evidence. Printouts, the video, Rickon's files, the journal. I stood on the porch rubble, wind tugging at my shirt, lung full of smoke. I pressed record again. I spoke not for revenge. I spoke for repair, for dignity. The letter arrived midday, carried in by Letitia's assistant. I was sitting across from Letitia in her San Francisco office, sunlight spilling through the windows over the bay. She slid it across the desk. They've filed a counterclaim, she said, calm but sharp. My heart thudded. The pages accused me of violating privacy, tampering with evidence. A manipulated voice clip in there somewhere, they claimed. Someone I trusted signed a false affidavit. My chest tightened. Rage, a red heat, rose first. Then doubt. Did I miss something? Did I misplace a document? Was my strategy solid enough? I closed my eyes for a moment. Asked Letitia, is everything we have airtight? She nodded tautly. We've checked signatures, timestamps, witnesses, but every lie they tell now will be louder than the truth we're trying to prove. That felt heavy. Reality felt thin. That evening, Quentin knocked on my motel door. I didn't want him there, but I opened it. He looked smaller than I remembered, like guilt had worn him down. He admitted he was paid by Delilah to stay silent, to watch the story unfold and pretend anything he said or knew didn't matter. He said it didn't change who he was, but it did. I asked if he wished harm. He said no, but being quiet was its own harm. He promised testimony if forced, but he warned me. Delilah has ways to twist things. My chest tightened at the betrayal, but there was compassion too, buried. He's my brother. Back in Letitia's office, Jude loaded the USB. Silence filled the air while the screen flickered with Delilah's voice. Make sure she sees the papers tomorrow. Then, documents showing my signature, obtained while I was sedated, drawn from forgeries, files I never approved. Legal experts confirmed forgery backed by choppy metadata. My throat burned. Embarrassment, anger, a stab of humiliation, but relief too. She couldn't claim I didn't see. She couldn't claim I didn't fight. Letitia said the affidavit from the trusted person, remembered as loyal, was shredded by this proof. They invited me on the morning show. Bright studio, lights harsh behind glass, Delilah calling in, host steering it like entertainment. I held my ground. I told them, behind every bright smile, there's a shadow of sacrifice. I revealed the audio clip, carefully chosen parts. I laid out how she rerouted shares, how she attempted to destroy proof. Public reaction was immediate. Some rallied to me, others doubted. But I told the truth, not because it earns applause, but because silence would have betrayed me. That night, I sat alone in the motel, scrolling through comment threads, some sympathetic, others cruel. She's unstable. She's seeking pity. Then a message from Dad's Echo, inside the wooden box. Don't let them rewrite your story. I held the charred wood piece again, rubbed its edges, burnt letters of my past. I gathered all the old letters Delilah sent, the ones saying she did it all for our legacy. They lay piled on the table. Then I set them on fire in a metal cup, a small flame, but enough. My phone rang. Delilah's attorney. We can settle now, he said, or see you in court. But no, my client will fight with everything she has. I let the words land. I dropped the phone. Letitia's office lights buzzed just enough to remind me I was alive. We were overlooking the tangle of lights across San Francisco Bay, bright specks mocking us. She pulled in Alexis, whose hands shook when she dropped the folder on the table. She was former Delilah's trusted employee once, now witness. Inside, paperwork that didn't lie. Alexis laid out 2 medical files manipulated, a signed statement confirming Delilah asked for Mia's passwords under pretense of care. She turned them over. My heart tried to beat steady, but it trembled. Then I locked my jaw. No more tears. That night I opened the small tin my father once gave me. Photos from my 18th birthday, my real smile, not forced. And a letter he wrote long before he got sick. It said there's a contingency trust fund, auto-triggered if someone tries to betray me. Delilah didn't know about it, not yet. I sat on the motel bed, reading words he never got to say out loud. You were always your mother's daughter, dangerous when cornered. I realized I wasn't alone. He believed in me. He shielded something I hadn't even searched for. Next, I sent a formal dinner invitation to Delilah through Letitia. Neutral ground, Oak Ridge Estate. The dining room smelled of polished wood and old portraits. I arrived first. Candlelight barely shimmered. I waited. Then Delilah came, wearing a smile that hid knives. I poured wine. She raised her glass. To family, she said softly. I lifted mine. She believed she'd won. Conversations started gentle. How the market was shifting, the usual courtesies. Then I asked, how deeply did you mean what you said about legacy? She smiled again. I recorded every word with a hidden recorder. She confessed, under her breath, how she shifted my shares, misled trustees, manipulated documents. She thought off the record. She wasn't careful. I listened. The recorder picked up more than she intended. In the next room, Letitia and Alexis listened via live stream. Their hackles rose with each confession. I did it for our name, Delilah said. You'll thank me when they respect what I built. I let her talk. Then I spoke. Legacy doesn't mean theft, and fire doesn't mean freedom, I said. Delilah's face tightened. She threw the flash drive on the table. You want the whole truth? Here, but you better be ready for it. My pulse settled into a rhythm of resolve. I didn't flinch. I met her eyes. Then let's finish this. In Letitia's office, I sat, silent, as the flash drive's contents unfurled on screen. Voice recordings, surveillance video, contracts signed under threats, forged documents. Delilah's web revealed itself. My throat felt dry. Alexis's statement, Rickon's files, they all pointed to the same thing. The will, altered years ago. My father's intentions stolen, rewritten. Twist emerged, evidence tying Delilah directly to Robert's distorted will. Her manipulation traced back further than I ever imagined. Letitia sprung into action, emergency motions, sealing assets, court orders filed, trustees frozen. Yet I said nothing. I watched betrayal, shock, weight press down. Victory tastes odd when your heart has been built for sorrow. The courtroom buzzed next day, reporters at doors, cameras with buzzing lenses, lights bright. I walked in, navy jacket pressed, hair pulled back. Nervous? Yes, but I walked with purpose. I stood before Judge Marisol Hayes. I said, justice isn't vengeance, it's balance restored. I spoke of contracts signed under fear, signatures forged, loyalty twisted. Delilah tried to offer settlement, whispered for peace, but the judge shook her head. She ruled in my favor. Delilah had no response left, no excuse thick enough. I didn't sit down. I held my chin high, not to shame her, but to reclaim what was stolen. After court, I drove the winding road back to Lake Tahoe. My cabin rebuilt with reclaimed wood, walls repainted, floors firm beneath my steps. Wood crackled in the fireplace for the first time since the fire. Night fell. I found a voicemail from Quentin. He sounded weak, sincere. He said he was sorry, regret in his voice. He wants reconnect. Memories I touched, the photos, books, small things Dad left untouched, felt pure now, undisturbed. I held that letter Daddy wrote, the one Alexis gave me. Tears came, not from pain, but from knowing I wasn't alone. He knew. He believed. Letitia offered to oversee the trust, to manage the paperwork. But I refused. I will start the foundation instead, in Dad's name. Corvin Reclaim Center, a place for those burned by betrayal, for women silenced by family lies. At its opening, I stood before neighbors, reporters, friends. I spoke like someone rooted in the truth. I was born from fire, but I do not burn others to feel whole. I light the way. Someone off to the side asked, "Aren't you scared of what comes next?" I smiled, quietly. No, I've already lived through the worst.